Hi everyone, I'm Carly, one of the ecology TAs, and in this video I'm going to be walking you through an Excel tutorial. So before we start, I'd encourage you all to open the Excel practice document on Colab so that you can follow along in Excel as we go through. The practice problem we're going to be working through is using data collected in the field to calculate an importance value for different species of trees at a plot. So before we get started, I'm just going to go through and define some of the equations that we're going to be using before we put those into practice in Excel. Okay, so first of all, the importance value. So the importance value is the indicator of species dominance, and it's based on two things, abundance and size. So the abundance is calculated through stem counts, and the size is calculated through dBH. So your importance value is going to be equal to your relative frequency, which relates your abundance, plus the relative dominance, which has to do with your size. So how do we figure out what relative dominance and relative frequency are? So relative dominance is going to equal your total basal area of a species divided by the total basal area of all trees at a plot. So the basal area of a tree is basically like taking a cross section of the tree and looking at that area of the circle. So if we have the dBH, or diameter at breast height, we're able to calculate what that area is just using our general area formula for a circle. So we'll have to convert the diameter to a radius to use this equation. So we can get the area by doing pi times r, or the radius, squared. And then, so that's how you get your basal area, and you can input those, the basal area of a species, and then get the basal area of all of the trees at a plot. So that's how you're going to get the relative dominance. Next up is the relative frequency. So this has to do with the abundance of stems in a plot. And it's equal to the number of stems of a certain species, X, at the plot, divided by the total number of stems of all species at the plot. So now that we know how to calculate relative frequency and relative dominance, we know how to get our importance value, because the importance value is equal to relative frequency plus relative dominance. So let's go into Excel and start calculating. So this is our original data set. So the column A records different tree species associated with certain individuals in a plot. So let's see, I think that CO stands for, we've got it back here. CO is chestnut oak, TP is tulip poplar, WA is white ash, and WO is white oak. So there in column A, we have the tree species, and in column B, we have the dBH, or the diameter at breast height in centimeters. So first, since we want to get the basal area, we first need to calculate the radius. So to do this, to calculate the radius of this tree individual, I'm going to click this box, hit equals, and then click this value, so B2 divided by 2. And then I'm hitting enter. So that is equal to 1/2 of the dBH. There's the radius. And you can see when I click on this cell, if you go up to this formula bar, it tells you what the formula is and like how that value, the value in this cell, is how we get that value. So in order to apply this to the whole column, I'm going to click here and drag all the way down. And you can see it's filled in this value. If you click on any of these, like right here, and you go up to the formula bar, you can see that by dragging down, it actually uses the corresponding value that's right next to it. So in this case, B9 divided by 2. So you're getting the correct radius for each individual tree. So next up, we're going to calculate the basal area, which again is just going to be pi times r squared. So once again, I'm going to start this equation with an equal sign. And then pi, 3.14, times r. So to get the value of r, I'm just going to click this cell, squared, caret 2. And then I'm hitting enter. And there's our basal area. And once again, you can see the formula up here, so you can refer to it again. I'm going to drag this down to apply it to the whole column. And there we go. There's our basal area. Now, we want to know the total basal area for the entire plot. So to do that, we need to add everything in this column. So we're going to be using an Excel function here. So I'm going to hit in this right next to total, I'm hitting equals sum, open parentheses, and then I'm going to drag and highlight all of the values that I want to sum. And then to finish this, you can either hit enter or close parentheses and then enter. And there you've completed your addition of that entire column. All right, so now that we know the basal area, we have all of the tools that we need to calculate relative dominance. So you can see down here, I'm moving to sheet 2, where we've already got these things, the radius and the basal area and the total basal area calculated. And so here, I'm going to start here where I've highlighted by calculating the dominance and the relative dominance of each tree species. So to calculate the dominance, I'm just going to sum the basal area of each instance of a certain tree species. So starting with CO, I'm writing equals sum, open parentheses, and then I'll highlight these 3 that correspond with CO. And then I'm hitting enter. And there's the dominance. And I'm going to do the same for each species. Sum, and these are the basal areas for TP. Now for WA. And last but not least, we're doing WO. Enter. Okay, great. So now we have the dominance for each species, and we have the total basal area. So to calculate the relative dominance, we're going to divide the species dominance by the total basal area. So the species basal area by the total basal area. So to do this, we'll do equals 1 species, so the CO basal area divided by the total basal area. And then we'll do this for each of the species. Okay, so there is our relative dominance. Next up, we can do our relative frequency. So remember that the relative frequency is the measurement of the number of total stems per species, and then divided by the total stems in the plot. So first, let's count the number of stems per species. And I know that it's tempting to just go in here and count 1, 2, 3. There are only 3 cherry or 3 COs in this data set, but expect in the future to have much larger data sets where it's going to be more difficult to just count by hand. So for instances like that, it's helpful to use a command like count, open parentheses, and then there are 3 COs right there, and hit enter. And so see, this counted the number of cells that I highlighted. One note for count, it only works on numbers. Like if you were to highlight the letters, it wouldn't work. So just keep that in mind when you're counting things. That's why I highlighted right to the right of CO. So I'll do this for here as well. Okay, so now we have the frequency of each species. And once again, we're going to sum every instance of a species, every individual, in order to get the total number of stems. So now we'll do the relative frequency, which, similar to relative dominance, we're going to grab this cell, the value of this cell, and divide it by the total number of stems. And there's our relative frequency for CO. We'll do the same, H3 divided by H7 for TP. Next we have this one. And then finally we have WO. So this divided by 14. Okay, so now we have the relative frequency and relative dominance, which means we have the 2 factors needed in order to calculate our importance values. So remember that we're just going to add relative dominance and relative frequency in order to obtain our importance values. So here I'm going to hit equals, and then I'll grab the CO relative frequency value plus the relative dominance value. I'll do the same for the tulip poplars. And the white ash. And then finally, the white oak. Okay, so now we have our final answer of what we were looking for. So as you can see from this, our most important tree here was the tree species was the chestnut oak with an importance value of 0.93. And the white ash was the least important with an importance value of 0.07. Some important things, some important takeaways for manipulating Excel in this is whenever you're creating a formula, always start with an equal sign. There are a lot of really cool things you can do on Excel, and you can look those up online, but some of the ones that we use today are sum to add values. We've also used count to count the number of cells that you've highlighted. I think that's all that we use today. But then of course you can also use multiplication, division, exponents, anything like that. Yeah, so if you have any further questions on using Excel or what we talked about today, you can talk to your TA about it, and I'm sure we would be very happy to help. All right, have a good night, everyone. Bye.